Hi everyone, my name is Priyanka Upadhyay, and today we're going to talk about demystifying enterprise product management. Welcome. A little bit about me. I currently work as a senior product manager at Salesforce, managing the salesforce.org website and lead to opportunity product space. I've been in the enterprise product space for a really long time, 16 years delivering products. I started off more on the customer or buyer persona, and where I was playing that role of being the customer or the buyer, and also implementing products. And then over time, moved into the other side, which is actually designing, building, and delivering those enterprise products. I've also led the product vision, strategy, and execution across industry verticals. What that means is I've worked in finance, healthcare, life sciences, retail, and many of those vertical areas. When I say domains, what I mean by that is CRM or customer relationship management, ITSM being IT service management, and similar other domains where I've had the opportunity to work on. I've worked on external products that are used by millions of users and also internal products that are used by thousands of internal users. I do love product management overall. It is a team sport. And if you look at the pictures to the right there, that is me on my first Himalayan trek about a little over 2 years ago now. And the picture there of the people kind of holding hands and crossing the river, that river crossing was quite an experience, and it was a good lesson in teamwork and collaboration. And that very much reminded me of product management and how I think about it. Some fun facts. I do love to travel and hike, as I just mentioned. Also learn more about different cultures and communities. I like to volunteer as well. And then also have a big artistic side where I like to paint, dance, learn new art techniques, and so on. Agenda for today, we will talk about just a quick overview of enterprise products and what they are and how they differ from B2C and so on. We will then cover just a little bit about some of the key roles and overlap and responsibilities. We'll then go behind the scenes a bit to cover sort of the idea to launch product journey. And I would say that, if you are to zone out in any part of this presentation, then maybe don't choose this topic to zone out of, because you might want to listen into this topic in particular. And then product adoption and evolution would be next. I would like to end by sharing some lessons learned that I've learned so far and what's helped me in my career journey as an enterprise PM. With that, let's get started. What are enterprise products? They are products built for companies to run their business on to help them be successful in their goals, which often include meeting the needs of their customers. So let's think about B2B versus B2C now, which is business to business versus business to consumer, right? The first thing, buyer personas are really different from end users in B2B. What I mean by that is, let's say you're a salesperson for Salesforce or any other enterprise software company, and you go in a room and you're trying to sell Sales Cloud or Marketing Cloud or any of those products. And let's assume Gap, the retailer, is your customer in this case, and they're looking for a marketing software to better engage with their customers. There might be a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, or CFO in the room. Those might be your buyers and decision makers, right? There might be influencers in the room. There may or may not be end users in the room. The end users of the product might be marketing operations analysts or associate who are going to run the show day to day, right? And really use this product. It is important in enterprise products to make your customer and buyer satisfied and happy, but it's equally important to make your end users happy because that is what leads to adoption and ultimate product success. For B2C products, it's not always the case, but buyer is often the end user. And that does simplify things a little bit. Let's take the example of Calm, which is an enterprise product that I use for meditation. Sorry, not an enterprise product, a B2C product that I use on my iPhone for meditation. So for Calm, I make the decision, I pay the monthly or the annual subscription, and I install it and I start to use it, right? So I'm the buyer and the end user. B2B products do have a longer, complex buying cycle compared to B2C because the investment is bigger, right? There's more time and money at stake. And so that process is more longer and thought out and more controlled. And I also want to mention that this is even more complex if you're looking at government, public sector, healthcare, maybe energy, or any of those regulated industries. What else? The center of sort of enterprise products, or the pillar of it, as I like to think of it, is your product has to perform, it has to be scalable, it has to be reliable. You might hear about trust and data privacy and security as some of the buzzwords when you think about enterprise products. And the reason is that when a company, let's say the Gap, the retailer in this example, is buying a product, they are looking for all of these things, right? Their reputation is also at stake because they might be using this product for their customers. They're also might be looking to grow in a different market. And so they might buy licenses as a 10,000 employee company, and they might scale up to a 20,000 employee company. And can those products continue to perform and meet their needs? One more is switching products. It is hard in enterprise software. I like to think of this as a marriage, and the B2C area, I like to think of it as more dating, right? If I, at enterprise, I might have so many customizations and apps and things built on top of the platform, the product that I bought, that it might be very hard to now switch to a new platform. I might have thousands of internal employees and users within a department or across the whole company that I need to sort of retrain and onboard and sell to and get their buy-in, right, to switch to the new product. B2C is, again, because the buyer is often the end user. Let's say I don't like my Calm app. I could just as easily cancel my subscription for the remainder of the year or whatever I'm allowed. And I could switch to Headspace and download that and uninstall the other one, install the new one, right? So making the switch is not as hard. And then last one, testing products is definitely a bit more complex in B2B, and we'll cover more on that later. B2B to C, I just added this towards the end of it because this is another term you might hear floating around a lot. And what it means is, in my example, you've got your, let's say I'm a Salesforce, sales executive, and I'm selling Marketing Cloud or any other product to a customer like Gap. That is a business, which is Salesforce, selling to Gap, another business. But there might be a customer community product or a website or e-commerce product that Gap is also buying. And in that case, guess who's going to engage with that product? It's going to be Gap's customers who love those new winter pants styles and want to talk about them online and want to buy these pants. And so that's going to be that customer engagement piece. So we're going to now go from business to consumer. Why work on B2B products? Why all this sort of interest? One, I do want to mention that the market size is pretty big. 260 billion is estimated market size by 2022. Another thing that I've observed post COVID-19 is the digital transformation of companies. It's not just a nice to have, it's an imperative, right? If you do this, you're going to retain your customers and you have a chance to grow and succeed. And if you don't do this, you might not even make it, right? You might not even be able to pay your rent for your restaurant and pay your employees and continue down the road. So it's not just sort of an afterthought anymore. One more thing to talk about here is enterprise products was sort of a, not so popular stepbrother or stepsister about 15 or 20 years ago when I started working on them. And today, there's so much interest and, people ask me all kinds of questions about how did you get into it and so on and so forth. And it's now turned into sort of, very much belonging in the family, and, and they're more sexy than before. They're more popular than before. So it's just been a great journey to see how far this sort of perception of enterprise products has come. Um, what else? There's a lot of demand for skills. As I mentioned before, you have the opportunity to solve large, complex business problems. You also can choose to sort of go deep in a domain if you love that, or you could go a bit cross domain like me. You could focus on, let's say, I love healthcare, I love energy, and I want to just go deep and build products for this sector. So there's a lot of opportunity to work on different types of products and serve different markets. Let's talk about some key roles in product management. So I looked at multiple definitions of product manager's role, and something that resonated with me is Marty Kagan's definition. So I took this sort of triangle concept that is in that book, which is valuable, usable, and feasible, right? What is valuable to the customer and what is usable that they can actually use, and what is feasible to build. And the product manager's job is to sort of discover that triangle, what those are, and then orchestrate a cross-functional herd of cats to build the product and delight your customers and users. It is not an easy job, but you can succeed at it with practice. Product manager, I just talked about sort of the discover, and then there's the envision, build, deliver, right? That's their core role. This is just sort of a rough Venn diagram representation that I pulled together. Again, it's by no means perfect. Some of the other roles here, let's talk about PMM. So if your product manager, pulled together the chef and the recipe and the ingredients and made your chocolate chip cookies and they're all made and ready to go, the PMM might then come in and say, okay, who are we selling this to? Who are our customers? Who's doing the selling? How are we selling? What's our go-to-market strategy? What kind of box do we put the cookies in? What kind of wrapping paper do we cover it with? Do we put a ribbon or do we not? What kind of messaging do we have for this product? So I'm oversimplifying here, but you get my point. That's sort of the PMM role. In a lot of companies, PMs often play the PMM role or vice versa. So there's not a separation between these two. And in some products, depending on how mature or big the product is, there is a separation between these two roles. Let's talk about program manager. So I like to talk about this role in the context of long-range initiatives. Like think about M&A, you acquire a company and you have so many products that you need to integrate with your existing suite of enterprise products. It might not be the best strategy to ask one PM to own it. There might be multiple PMs that own it, but they don't necessarily have time to drive all these sort of projects because they're focused on their core roadmap and delivery. Program manager can come in and play hand in hand with the PM to run some of these more longer term initiatives. And then product owner is again a term that is used interchangeably sometimes with PM. In my mind, they are two different roles. And the way I see the PO is more Scrum focused. They're working with the engineering team and architects to do sprint planning, gathering requirements for the next sprints or next 2 sprints. They're testing, they're coordinating, they're delivering. It's still a really important role. And many mature product owners can also do the PM job as well. And PMs often end up doing the PO role. But I do think of when you call yourself a product manager, you've got to wear a long range hat. You've got to think about the big picture. You've got to think about dependencies. You've got to solve big, tricky, messy problems sometimes. And you've got to sort of protect your team and get them to focus to build the product. Let's go behind the scenes a bit in terms of how we go from idea to launch. So in the product journey, we've got the why, which is why are we building the product and who are we building it for? Then we've got the what. We have multiple ideas. What do we build? Next, we think about how do we build this stuff? Maybe we design it first, and then we think about development approach. And we work with engineering, we work with UX, collaborate. And then you have your when. Is when do you release this product, or I have a product. I know that my company is a big enterprise company and we do 2 releases a year. How do I decide which features for my product should go into which release, right? Which ones are the most important features? And then you launch your product. And that right circle there is just trying to show that, products don't just sort of fall off the shelf after they're launched, right? Especially for new products, you might think of it as, a baby that was just sort of launched into the market. And now you want to grow this baby and you want to sustain it and grow it, and launch the next iteration and innovate on it and continue that cycle. One thing that I did want to mention before we get into kind of how do we build the product and all of that is key success metrics. So you do want to define your success metrics ahead of time as much as possible as a PM, because this is going to help you measure at the end of your product whether you were successful or not. There's many ways to do this. One way that I've done this before is kind of thinking about my key user personas. Who am I building this product for, right? And what are their goals? What are their desires? What are their target metrics? And trying to answer the question, will my product help enable their goals and their metrics? So think about the sales manager. Let's say you're building some kind of automated product that, makes the job of a sales manager easier. Is that going to help them increase or improve any of their metrics like ACV or AOV? That's what they care about, right? Marketing manager, they might care about, lead gen or customer engagement. And does your product help them do that better, faster? Customer success manager, they care about customer satisfaction, case deflection, cases solved by automation. Those are some of their metrics. So again, the product that you're delivering, let's say you were developing an, agent automatic assignment engine where cases automatically get assigned to agents based on some algorithm or machine learning or whatnot. Will this product help improve any of these metrics or maybe multiple metrics? And then after your product is launched, you can kind of have something to measure against. Let's get into the ideation piece now. Is, why are we building this product and who are we building it for? That first inner circle there is essentially ideas. And the PM, it is their job to solicit these ideas from different sources and channels, right? And listen with empathy, not just to customers, but all the other channels that I'm just going to talk about. I also put in the customer experience or the user experience here because that should be sort of enveloping everything, right? Where you're evaluating an idea, you want to think about how this enables or does not enable an improved customer experience. For enterprise products, because your customers are sort of one layer removed from you, how do you get this feedback? So you might engage with a group of, you might have an early adopter program. Some enterprise companies have this where you might have a set of partners or customers that are willing to get an early launch for new products and sort of test it with you before it goes fully public, big launch to all customers. You might be able to also engage with customers through Dreamforce or Knowledge or any of these sort of events and big user conferences that these enterprise product companies have and get their feedback. You might be able to share a prototype at such conferences and get feedback on your specific ideas and prototype from your customers so that you kind of have a better sense of what to build. You might have a feedback button on your website or customer portal where you get that direct feedback of what's working great and what your customers are looking for. Market and industry needs also really important that you want to think about, is this market already saturated with a certain kind of product? What is the gap that no other competitor is building products for? What is that differentiator that we can deliver for this market or this industry? And then you want to talk to a lot of your internal partners, marketing, sales, engineering, and customer success. Because a lot of these teams, they talk to customers, right? Support talks to customers every day and here's their pain points. They have that data on what's going on in the hearts and minds of your customers. What are they struggling with? What's working well? What's not? Sales is talking to customers also very regularly in the room with them. They might have valuable feedback. My only suggestion would be don't let any of these teams specifically and only drive your product roadmap, but rather solicit feedback from everyone, align them on your roadmap, and make sure that your roadmap delivers the maximum value for the largest set of customers. And then partner ecosystem. So more and more, a lot of enterprise companies are recognizing and validating the importance of the partner ecosystem. What partners are doing is they might be system integrators that are implementing your product, your enterprise product, for a customer. So they're there, on the ground doing this work, and there's so much feedback that they get, right? So you might have an internal stakeholder. I don't have it shown here, but you could have another team called alliances or partner operations that works with these partners, and that may be an easy team to collaborate with regularly. And I've done that in the past, where they have that precious feedback from partners and customers that could also feed into building your roadmap. Okay, what do we build? We got so many ideas on that last slide and so many people that we talked to. And now we're just looking at this big list of ideas, a bit mesmerized. Where do we go from here? Think about organizational vision and big bets, right? So what does your company as an enterprise product company want to focus on? Does it want to focus on more leveraging new technologies like AI or machine learning to get that competitive advantage? Does it want to really help your customers grow faster? Does it want to integrate data better? Like, what are those big bets, right? And decide what you want to build in alignment with those big bets. Gather data and metrics is another big one that I would want to share. It can help you to evaluate one idea against another, right? So you might say that, well, if I invest in this idea and build a product to solve it, this is a new revenue generator, and it could be, $5 million a year potentially. And this other product could give me operational efficiencies of $4 million a year. Maybe which one do I want to invest in right now? 80-20 rule is something I've heard a lot since I've been in product management, which is discover the 20% of the effort that's going to drive 80% of your value. That's what it means. This is a sort of a core principle. And then you might think about, will your product be customer facing or internal, or sort of have both aspects? Do you really want to build this product, or could you buy a third-party tool that does what you want and you don't need to go build it? Talk to other PMs. I cannot emphasize this enough. And you will be surprised how in large companies, enterprise companies, there are so many product teams working on so many siloed product roadmaps that does get shared, but not as much as it should be, right? And so that's key, to talk to other PMs and share those roadmaps. And last one is acquisitions. A lot of large enterprise companies grow by acquisition. So if you're not keeping an eye out on, that acquisition that just happened, that products that started to get integrated into our system, and me and my 10 people engineering team focusing on building this new product, is that the same thing? Is it going to deliver value? Or now we're going to use that acquired product, and so I should not build this thing anymore that I was planning to build, right? So those are all important considerations. How do I build this? We'll talk about development frameworks, requirements and design, and build and test. So we're still in the how phase. Development frameworks. There are a number of different frameworks. I'm going to specifically contrast waterfall against agile a little bit. And I would love your comments on what you think about this slide and about what has worked for you and what are challenges with agile. Also would love to hear more about Kanban. I'm not going to cover it right now for time's sake, but let's get into waterfall. So I've worked on both of these, started off on the East Coast, at least very early in my career. Definitely a lot of sort of waterfall product development or product implementation and so on, where you go from a very long sort of requirements phase to sort of a long design phase and a long build phase. And the key shortfall of this method, in my experience, is that your customers are left a bit in the dark when a lot of these long things are happening. So you're going away for a month, writing and honing your requirements again and again with your product analyst or your business analyst, and you come back and your requirements have changed, or your developers are building things for so long with no sort of customer engagement in the middle, that when you have that final demo and you say, hey, what do you think of this product? Your customers are like, well, this is not what we wanted. This no longer meets our needs, right? So with Agile, what we do is there's this concept of delivering incremental value. And there's a ton of coaching on Agile. There's a ton of just documentation on Agile that you can read up. I am a certified Scrum Master, and I've taken a bunch of PO trainings as well in the past. And what happens with Agile is, this is just an example here. Let's say you had a 2-week was your cycle. It could be 3 weeks. It could be 4 weeks. But in this example, you've got your sprint, which is, think of it as your incremental delivery. And at the end of each sprint, you deliver or you ship or you release whatever you've built till then. And then you do it again and then again. And in each sprint, you have a little phase or a little, parallel work streams that are going on, which are you're doing your requirements, you're writing your user stories, you're refining those, you're also designing with UX or other teams, you're building, testing, and then releasing it. So the one key benefit is that customers are brought along hand in hand in the whole product development journey. You do demos each sprint. So mid-sprint, just end of 1 week, I show you what I've built. And if you don't like it, well, we have the opportunity to tweak it. So I think that customer feedback is really valuable. Another one that is that you're more likely to end up with a product that the customer will be happy with. Still not a guarantee, still could happen that things change, but you end up with a much more likelihood of your customers or your end users loving your product. And those are some of the, sort of pros and cons between waterfall and agile. Let's get a bit more deeper into requirements. So let's say you've decided to build a product. Let's say you want to build a customer portal. You want to understand what your user personas are. Is your user persona a customer who is looking to search for knowledge articles? Is it the person who's the frequent caller to support and you want to deflect their cases? Is your user persona trying to do some self-service stuff like, schedule their reboots for their instance or things like that? So define the personas for who you're building the product. And then each of those personas might have multiple use cases. Decide which ones you want to focus on. The next step is to write your epics and your user stories, and think of epics as sort of the big bubble of work. And there might be multiple epics. You might have 3 epics, for example, for a large project. And each epic will consist of stories. Story is essentially a feature or, a piece of the product that can be independently delivered at the end of the sprint and still delivers value for the customer. So it has to be usable. Just because it is small, just because it's delivered in 2 weeks, doesn't mean it's half a button or a button that does not work, right? It still has to be a button that works, but it might not do all the things that we want it to do in the first iteration. It might only do the one thing, and then we might program it to do more things. So that's sort of the requirements phase. How does the PM prioritize these requirements? So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go into all of these methods, but you can search them up online. Some of my favorite ones are story mapping. I also heard a lot of nice things from other PMs about buy a feature technique. So story mapping is where you have user stories and post-its, and based on business value and desires, you would work with your customers or end users to draw a line and kind of say what falls above the line, which is our minimum viable product, MVP, and what falls below the line are things we're going to build as a next release or the release after that. Value versus complexity, cost benefit analysis are kind of obvious, but you think about what is the cost of building this product or this feature versus the benefits that it provides, right? And then design thinking is an amazing new and emerging sort of area of thinking about product management and prioritization that you might also want to explore. Then we think about, we talked about requirements, and now let's get into design, where we have solution design that a PM might work on with architects, tech lead, or engineering management, Scrum team. If there are projects or products that you're delivering or responsible to work on that touch multiple products, that touch integrations, have a lot of complexity, that enterprise architecture is another big collaborator that I've worked with for many years. And they're a big value add, working with them to design for both the short-term success and long-term gains. You also have UX design. That is a key partner. And in my experience, again, a big value add in terms of working with them to make sure that you deliver the best experience for your users and customers. And lastly, some other like sort of design techniques is your developers might not build the big full product right away, right? You might want to work with them to say, let's define a prototype and let's just demo the prototype. And if our customers, internal or external, love this product, maybe then we can invest more time and money to go full on, right, to build this product. And then wireframing is another technique that there's multiple tools for this. And a UX designer might often use this, but I found that when you don't have a UX designer, which sometimes you don't on your team, a PM can also use wireframing and other techniques, and they come in very handy when making decisions. Let's talk about build and test. So we have PM, we have the architects, engineers, so all of these personas together discuss and decide the approach on how to build a product. And you also think about what features go into each sprint. There's a lot more that goes into it, but I won't go there right now. You want to deliver that incremental business value for each sprint that I talked about before. There's also DevOps processes, which is think about it as the operations of development. So it could be your code is written, but who checks your code? You know, is there a consistent code review process in place? How is your code merged across multiple branches that, you know, when code gets merged, is that done in a consistent way? How is your release management done? Is that all manual or automated? How is your testing automation done? Is that, you know, is there test coverage where you have all of your product areas can be easily tested through automation before you launch? So there's a lot of areas here that really govern how fast you can get the product out the door, and also how what is the quality of the product and does it meet your customers' needs. And then lastly, you want to test your products extensively internally, which is sort of drink your own champagne, right? So another team might have built a product, but I'm another PM, I would still be testing their products. Or across the company, there are teams that are designated with testing products before they go to market. Let's talk about release. So when we have an external facing release, you want to think about consistent releases, right? So you do have typically these days, maybe twice a year or a little more frequent releases for enterprise products. This helps customers to plan for them because it's a huge lift. Sometimes it's not, for customers to move from one release to the next, and they have a lot of planning to do. You want to think about competitive products and their releases and time your product launch maybe before that. You also want to think about internal readiness. Is the sales motion ready to go? Is the go-to-market team ready? Are your business development reps ready? You want to think about, is support trained and ready? And do they know about this new product? And if they get calls or they get cases, how do they handle it? Legal and compliance and approval and alignment, that has become a key area to make sure your product does not get blocked for launch. We've got GDPR, as you all might have heard. You've got CCPA in California. There's a number of other rules and regulations depending on your geography. And so you want to make sure legal and compliance is sort of also an important partner with you in this product journey. And then blackout dates are kind of applicable for external and internal facing products. But you want to think about, is this end of the year and is the bad time to launch a new product? Is it a product for sales and they're closing deals at the end of the month? And so maybe you don't want to launch your products end of the month. You want to launch it before or after. There's other considerations for internal products here that I've mentioned that you can refer to. And you might also want to think about both considerations, because there might be products that are external facing, but also have some internal use. What happens after you launch the product, right? It still needs to be adopted by your customers. I just want to share that adoption is so important that large enterprise companies, they do often have adoption teams that are dedicated to measuring adoption and coming up with strategies and ways to help manage change and have frameworks and templates ready to go for customers to adopt the product more easily. Measuring success, so we talked about defining those metrics up front. If you remember on an earlier slide, now's the time. Maybe we launched in January and it's April, right? And we've got a quarter worth of data. Let's go measure our metrics and improve based upon that. And that leads me to sort of a very oversimplified, high-level view of enterprise product lifecycle. So you've got your GA, stands for general availability or launch, which is the green on the left. Then you've got your growing the product phase, where you might say, let's expand to new markets, let's add new features and functionality, let's meet the needs of another customer base. Innovation is key to product success. So you do want to think about how can you really differentiate your product from your competitors and add something new and missing in the market. And that cycle sort of goes on. And at some point, once your product reaches a certain maturity level or the technology drastically changes or improves, you might want to think about retiring your product or end of life your product and replace it with a new one, because it's often more smart to do that than to, sort of keep building on top of the older platform or the older product. And let's just share do want to share some lessons learned. So if you take one thing away from today's presentation, let it be this one, this yellow post-it in the middle, which is don't be afraid to say no. And what I mean by this is it's a high pressure job. It's a high stress job. You're going to get a lot of people telling you what to do, telling you what to build, telling you this has to be on your roadmap. Why is it not? It's important that you stay grounded in your key principles on what drives value for your customers and what drives value for your largest customers across the board or across domains or industries, and have that broad vision and view, and say no when something doesn't make sense, even if it is really hard to say no. Customer empathy is a big one I want to call out. Customers often have pain points and frustrations. And if you just listen to them with empathy, you'll really hear that next big problem, which could be the next big idea, which could be your next big product. What else? Win as a team, lose as a PM. So I put this down because often product success, the PM might take all the credit for it, but it really shouldn't be the case, right? It's very much a team sport, like I talked about before. So if you win, you really win as a team. And if you lose, or let's say that a product launch didn't go the way you wanted to, or it didn't generate the revenue you were hoping for, all those setbacks, you've got to own your setbacks. So that would be my 2 cents there, is that owning your mistakes is really important to building trust across your team and across your business partners. And that's what's going to help you learn and grow and be a successful PM in the long run. Lastly, let's talk about all the successful PMs and kind of what they do. One of the things they do is wear many hats. First one being be the voice of the customer. So kind of a little bit psychologist and a little bit Thomas Edison, inventor, or a little bit detective, to think about, the customer's telling me they're having trouble with this, but maybe they're actually having trouble with that. and identifying those hidden needs and unmet needs. The next one is focus till you have a clear MVP, and then focus on your MVP to get it done. So you think about Chef Gordon Ramsay, kind of chop, 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 get rid of what you don't need, right? Be strong, prioritize. This person, Jack Pritchard, I learned about is star firefighter from New York. And this is an important role to fight fire so that the core team can stay focused on building the products, and the PM needs to handle this. Tom Brady, of course, the quarterback does not have the maximum priority on the team, but it is their responsibility to get the ball in the end zone and score the maximum points to win. So with that, we get to the last one, which is movie director, my favorite, Steven Spielberg. And when I think of conductors, then Stravinsky comes to mind because of watching all those ballets in New York. And thinking about a diplomat or an ambassador or secretary of state like Colin Powell, what did they do? They corral these large groups to get things done and do it so harmoniously. So those are all the hats of a PM: is part psychologist, part detective, part director, and part diplomat and ambassador. That's what helps you be successful. And with that, thank you very much for listening.